Get into that. Okay. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another Fish the Moment podcast. Today we're joined by Jimmy, and we're going to be breaking down our recent trip to Lake Millwood. We were in the boat together for 2 days, and it was interesting because we found some differences in our fishing styles that showed up on the lake, and we're going to get into why sometimes some techniques work well for me and not for Jimmy, or vice versa. And it was a pretty interesting deal. But Jimmy, how's it going today?
Man, it's going good. It's getting pretty hot down here. I know I checked the weather up your way, and it's hot, but it's really hot down here. So hope that's going to help the fishing in the next couple of days. It's glad to be back, and let's get in our little adventure we had down here in Southwest Arkansas.
Oh, it was an adventure, all right. We'll get into all that. When you're down in Nashville, Arkansas, there's bound to be some fun stuff happening. Before we get into that, though, I do want to give a few shout-outs to our sponsors for today's podcast. First up, Bridgeford Beef Jerky. Bridgeford Beef Jerky is an amazing snack to take on the boat, guys. Jimmy and I went through several packs of this while we were on the lake together. It's full of protein, great way to kind of keep yourself full and fueled up on the water. And more than anything, Bridgeford is just an awesome brand because they support bass fishing. They sponsor this podcast. They sponsor professional fishermen out on the Bassmaster Elite Series, Major League Fishing Tours, things like that. And if you're looking for a great brand to just support at your local stores, check out some Bridgeford Beef Jerky. I mean, aside from being a great snack, it is available in a lot of easy to access places. You got your Dollar Generals, Walmart's, gas stations, so it's something you can pick up pretty much anywhere, and definitely something that Jimmy and I love on the water. Would you agree with that, Jimmy?
Yes, one thing I was telling you about it that after I've started eating it quite a bit. Is that it's not as hard as some of the other jerkies, and me, my teeth, I've had some dental issues at times, so it's actually been nice for my teeth. Very tasteful, and like I said, I mean, it's very, I always am a beef jerky guy on the water.
Awesome. Well, yeah, definitely check out Bridgeford Beef Jerky, guys. Thanks for supporting the podcast to Bridgeford. Another sponsor we want to talk about is the Bass Tank. The Bass Tank is the premier bass fishing electronics installation company in the entire country. They're based out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. They have all the major brands, and they will get you set up with the right fish finder on your boat for the style of fishing you're doing. That's one thing I always tell guys about the Bass Tank, Jimmy, is that not only do they install electronics correctly, but they're going to make sure that they get you the right electronics for what you need. A lot of guys fish for crappie or bass or catfish, or maybe they fish for bass, but they're fishing on a real dirty water lake versus a clear water lake. And the guys at the Bass Tank are going to set up your boat the right way based on how you want to fish and the lakes you're fishing. So definitely give them a call at their toll-free number, which is 918-509-7864, or visit their website, thebasstank.com, and they will help you get everything installed properly, help you get some good deals on some of the newest products, and it's definitely a great way to take your fishing to the next level. Good deal. Well, that is the sponsor stuff. Now let's jump into Lake Millwood. And the one thing I will say about Lake Millwood, for those who have never heard about it or seen it, we scroll on Google Earth here, and if you're watching on the video, you'll see this. If you're on the podcast, you might not be able to. But all the lakes around here in Arkansas are nice and clear around the area. They're nice and dark blue, and then you get this mud hole down here, this green, bright green water. This is Millwood. It's real dirty, it's shallow, it's stumpy, and it's a lot of fun to fish.
Yeah, and right now, depending who you talk to, it's kind of on a downward spiral. Each lake's have their ups and downs. I know 5-6 years ago, it was in the Bassmaster, I believe, top 25, either lakes in the central region or the country. It made the top 25 for one of those, so don't get me, on it. But when I talk to all these locals and even some of the guys that have taught me the lake, they say 10 to 15 years ago, man, it was crazy. And even one of those comments we saw today, from our Millwood video that we put out of my grind tough day on Millwood, someone said, man, you used to catch a lot of 6 to 8 pounders, and that was true. But recently in the previous, for me, I've seen it's a lot tougher now than it was 2-3 years ago. But it's still, though, with that in mind, I love the lake. It is my favorite lake in Arkansas to fish, just because you can catch them so many ways. You can catch them up shallow. You can catch them as, you're going to see Johnny. We're going to talk about it. You can catch them on the frog, I'm not a big frog guy. I know that's a tactic a lot of people like to do. You can catch fish even here offshore. So there's so many ways to fish. It's made me a better angler. But it is also a very dangerous place. And like I said, it's a little different body of water.
For sure, and that's something that's kind of interesting. One, from a navigation perspective, it's fun watching Jimmy run the poles and all the things. It's all standing trees out here, guys, and there's navigational poles. But if you get outside the poles, you're ripping your lower unit off, you're tearing a hole in your boat. It's pretty sketch. And the area where we actually caught some of our fish, and it was pretty interesting, one of the areas is up here. It's called Cotton Shed, and there's the Saline River that runs in. And we have a video coming out this Friday that you guys will be able to check out watching this. But one thing that was fascinating about this is that fishing with Jimmy for 2 days, we realized how beneficial it was to have each other's knowledge when we actually got to the lake. And I'll give you an example just from this cotton shed area, and we'll break this down. And I think it's something that you guys can really take to the water with you when you fish with other friends, or if you spend a lot of your time fishing alone, maybe it'll kind of encourage you to get a fishing buddy, because it can actually be very helpful. I personally just fish by myself most of the time, and I realized I think that I might be missing a lot of potential. So the area where we ended up fishing, guys, if we go into this river, is basically, I'm going to try to find an image where the lake is a little bit lower, because I think it'll give a better example of this. Here we go. So this is basically the area where we came in, and it's just a little bend in this river, and this is when the lake is down, so you can see it's pretty shallow in here. When the lake is up, there's a little bit more water, and the lake does fluctuate quite a bit. But the key little spot that we were fishing was right in here, guys. And this is pretty similar to what it looked like for us, Jimmy, right? Maybe just a little bit higher water.
Yeah, that's what it was. Pretty, it was kind of stable for, at least a couple of days when you came down. It was right above level pool. Right here, this photo, I know there's a lot of grass right there, but you can see that kind of that ditch right there that came in. And, like I said, in the video, people noticed, our electronics was off and my trolling motor was as high up as I can get it. So we were some shallow water.
Super shallow. And the deal with this little ditch that we're fishing, and we call it a ditch. I'm going to try to keep scrolling through and finding a good image. I think this is probably the best one right here. Is that you have this river that runs in from the Saline River here, and it dumps out into the lake. And there was a lot of current because it rained actually the middle of our fishing day. We went out in the morning, didn't do that great, and then the rain came through and it started pushing current through this river. And there's this little ditch that had the water pushing through into this big open flat in here. So there's a big flat, water's dumping out. The deepest that water is 2 feet. It's super shallow. So I don't think these fish are necessarily living in this area year round. I think they probably live in this river where you have that, 8-9 feet of water. But because of that current pushing through, the water was pushing out into this big flat. As you can see, there's a ton of little stick-ups. There's some like bulrushes, reeds, whatever you want to call them. And then there's also just some isolated patches of coontail grass that's out here. And this water was pushing through here. And right when we got in this area, actually, Jimmy was like, I don't know, this doesn't look quite right. And kind of getting that, Jimmy, why you thought the area didn't look right when we first pulled in there.
Yeah, well, I've and we talked about in the video, I hadn't fished up there in that area of the lake probably in about a year. And typically when I do go up there, it's not after, we had that rain, as Johnny talked about that day. The day before, it also rained, y'all. And then, 2 days prior, we had a big rain. So what that rain did was, of course, the Saline River is coming from a lake right above called Derricks. And, these are all just flood control lakes. So this river here had a lot of current right now getting pulled from Derricks. But with that, it was muddy. And anytime I've fished up there, I've either fished it when it's, not as much current or, coming down. It's more stable. It's more clean. But we got up there and it was just chocolate milk. And as y'all saw my video today, and I talked about it, I like to find the clean water there, but I have caught fish in dirty water as this day was. If you look at the waters we're fishing, it's like, wow, totally different. So that was the thing. We pulled in there. I knew there was a lot of current right there, and I just didn't like it. My gut was kind of saying like, hey, get out of here. And Johnny's like, no, hey, let's go fishing, son. Let's go.
Yeah, that's kind of what I like to do, guys, is when we get into an area, and Jimmy said, there's some fish that are known to be caught up here certain times of the year. So we know there's at least a concentration of fish in that area. Maybe not the biggest fish, maybe not the best fish in the whole lake, but we know there's fish that live in this area. And in my mind, I'm like, there's got to be a way to get him to bite. Well, this is the thing that's interesting is I think I'm probably better in general at finding fish than a lot of guys, but I'm not always the best at catching the fish. I'm pretty good at saying this is where the fish should be, but I'm not always the best at maximizing the area because I like finding them. Where I think Jimmy is really good at maximizing areas and getting the fish out that are there, especially in a lot of these tactics. And we'll kind of talk about this because it's really fascinating as we get into a couple more examples. But we pulled into this area, and I was like, well, let's go into this little chute. There's current running through it. And let's see if some fish are positioned out the other end on this big flat where there's the isolated patches of grass and stuff like that. Well, when I went through there, my first instinct was to pick up a moving bait. So I was swimming a jig, working the bait fast, throwing a frog, and we weren't getting any bites. Well, Jimmy over here is like, I'm going to pick up a Texas rig creature bait. It was a little fighting frog. And he started flipping it around these little cattail islands and things like that. Caught a really good fish. Caught another good fish. Caught a third good fish. And I hadn't got a bite yet. And it's really interesting because if I had gone through this area, even though there was a good concentration of fish there, it's highly likely that I would have not caught any of those fish. I went into the right area. My boat was around the right area, but I would have not thrown the Texas rig creature bait. That's not like flipping a little, Texas rig fighting frog is not something I normally would do. And I probably would have gone through this area and not caught anything. But at the same time, Jimmy may have not even gone into this area to start with to be able to catch those fish. So us teaming up was perfect because he was able to figure out the way to catch them, and I was able to find the area, and it took both our knowledge together to catch these fish, where if we had been there separately, probably neither of us would have caught fish there.
Yeah, you're right. That's what you talked about fishing by yourself, and you've done a lot because of, just the fish of the moment, your job, and how it's gone. And I used to fish a lot with a lot of my buddies. I have a couple different sets, and I even text two of them, my younger guys. I call them my little prodigies. I texted them this morning and said, hey, I know before July, y'all are busy. Y'all got tournaments, and I got this going on. But I was like, but in July, y'all got to come down, and we're just going to go get some fishing just to catch you up. And it's good to, because you learn so much from other people, or, like we're about to talk about that frog in a little bit. And I was starting to work on that frog video we have for y'all. And, Johnny just wore me out in the frog. And part of that is, to me, and everybody likes to throw a frog. Now, I have my own little style of bait I do, kind of like a horny toad type deal. But I have one friend in particular that is good at the frog. So I never throw it. Like, he throws it. That's what he does. I do something different. And so, but like here, that's what Johnny's talking about, y'all. I mean, us teaming up together. One thing that I got from it is, y'all, I fished Millwood for 4 years, and it was like a light, or like a little light bulb hit off when we caught fish in this area, because I know where I can mimic this now in other parts of the lake. And Johnny over here, like I said, I wanted to leave, and Johnny's like, no, dude, figure it out, So I was kind of like, it was like a voila moment when we caught fish here. And then, like Johnny said, Johnny might have fished this thing so fast and kept his trolling motor on 90 speed, just and might not have got them to bite. So it was pretty neat for it to work out, man. I can't wait for y'all to see the video.
For sure. And we'll kind of go give an idea of what we were doing on the other stuff too. So on that frog deal, what was happening on the frog deal is that we were in another little backwater, and basically what was happening is that these fish were setting up around some shallower trees, grass pads. It's not, the area was just, they were just kind of everywhere. It wasn't like this specific deal. The area was just happening, and you could pretty much just go anywhere you wanted. And we also had perfect conditions for the frog. It was humid, it was calm conditions, and I told Jimmy they're going to chew a frog. Well, Jimmy said he doesn't really throw a frog all that much. So in this case, we flipped it. Jimmy got us in the right area. He's like, hey, I think this is the area we're going to be able to get on a frog bite, or a bite in the shallow grass. And I rolled in here, and this isn't the best example image, because this is when the lake is not really doing its thing. But here you go. Like, you got see more pads and all this stuff in here. You can roll through this area, and I was throwing the frog, and I think I caught like 13 frogfish to Jimmy's 0 frogfish. It was to the point where it was like kind of getting crazy, where I was getting so many bites on the frog, and I was fishing out the back of the boat. Jimmy was getting first cast on stuff, and we kind of determined a couple things on that. One, it was the way that Jimmy was working the frog. I throw a frog a lot. You guys don't see me as like a shallow water guy, but I grew up fishing Lake Dardanelle, and I did so well in a frog in a ton of tournaments, and I finished second in the high school fishing world finals out of 200 boats on Lake Dardanelle. throwing a frog. That's how I finished second. You'd think it was offshore, but it was every fish I caught was on a frog. So I love frog fishing, and I know how to work the bait. And in that frog video, I'll talk about that, and you'll see the video of us, explaining the difference in our retrieve and stuff. But that deal was so fascinating because I could throw that frog, and I had the confidence in it. I knew the perfect technique to work it, and I caught the fish. Now, by the end of the night, I explained to Jimmy how to work that frog the right way. He started catching some fish as well, and now he has a lot more confidence in it. But then we flip it, we go back the next day, and we actually came back to the exact same area of the lake, but in different conditions. The day before, it was humid, and it was calm. The next day, it was windy, and it was kind of low humidity, very low humidity. It was almost kind of like chilly. It felt weird when we were out there. And we went through the same area, and I got, 2 bites on a frog, and they were both like 10 inchers. And it was not good.
Yeah, and you also had some miss the frog. And that was something, that was like 2 days later, there was that tournament out there. And, a lot of guys were calling me, talking to me. They started seeing us posting pictures of fish. And a lot of people were getting the frogs, so all of a sudden they were missing them. They were just missing the baits, and those conditions changed, But, it was crazy. Y'all, Johnny said that, hey, we're about to catch him on the frog. And he was right. Everything was perfect for it. Even that area that we caught him at, we went right back there, and y'all had we had 2 bites in one spot, none in the other. And we were like, okay. And then that's why I told John, I was like, yep, this is Millwood. A lot of people that know Millwood and fish it a lot know those fish will be there one day and not the next. But they are still in the area. You just got to find a way to catch them, and I'll let Johnny kind of get us into that.
Yeah, that was the crazy deal. Is we knew, in my mind, if we caught them there the day before, they didn't swim 100 miles away. That's the thing. Yeah. I was telling Jimmy that, I'm like, if there's fish and we know them are in an area, we just need to grind and sit there and figure it out. And I do that, I think, more than a lot of guys, where I'm more of just like a grinder. I'll just grind it out. And if I feel like the fish are there, I'm going to find a way to get them to bite if I feel like they're there. Now, a lot of times I don't get bit in those areas because of the technique. So, like, for example, in that first area, that cotton shed area, I may have never even got a bite. So if I don't get a bite in an area, I don't stay there. But if I'm getting bit, I will try to just maximize that spot. So we go through here, first little loop with the frog, and nothing. It was bad. So we then come back, and we're like, okay, let's slow down a little bit. And we literally had just gone through this area with the trolling motor on decent speed, going right by this stuff. I mean, our trolling motor was like a foot away from some of these like mats and stuff that were back in here. And we literally turned back around. Jimmy picks up, again, a flipping bait. He's flipping a creature bait. This time it was a Z-craw as opposed to the fighting frog. And he smacks a 5-pounder in the face. And it was crazy because we just fished that with frogs and swim jigs and the fast-moving baits. Come right back, follow ourselves up, and 5 minutes later, Jimmy catches a 5. I lose a good one. I don't catch any fish. Jimmy kicks my butt that day. And we kind of went back and forth. Either Jimmy's kicking my butt on the Texas rig or I'm kicking his butt on the frog. And it's so crazy because I'm not a Texas rig guy. That's not my confidence. It's not really what I like to do that much. I don't really flip all that much. Jimmy loves it. But I love the frog, and if we had gone through those 2 days, Jimmy probably would have had 14 to 15 pounds by himself flipping the second day. On the first day, I would have had 14 or 15 pounds throwing the frog. But then flip it again, I would have had 2 fish on the frog the day that Jimmy had 15 pounds, and Jimmy may have had 2 fish flipping the day I had 15 pounds. It's that big of a difference, guys, sometimes, where you can be in the exact same area and just have one little difference in bait. And that's it.
Yeah, and the crazy about that second time, we went out there trying to make y'all a frog video. I mean, that was it. We checked more areas out. We ran around the lake, and Johnny had a couple other blow-ups, and it just wasn't right. He even was saying it. He told me one stretch, he was like, dude, you got to come back, fish these. He goes, there are going to be fish here. And I'm over here like, yeah, I am. I was like, I'm definitely going to come back here. But then, that one stretch Johnny's talking about, y'all, I mean, when I go back and look at the footage, we fished there, y'all, for 12 minutes and had 6 bites. And we already fished it twice with the frog. And, there was not much daylight left. And we caught these fish, and we were both like, wow, what if we would have done this an hour sooner? So it's interesting, just the different styles, the techniques. And And like I said, I do like to flip, and that's one thing I know after fishing with other people's fished with me down here. They went to their lakes, like, I've told you, Hamilton and Washita. I know two guys that will go there and flip, and it blows my mind because me and you fished Washita and Hamilton. We're not going to talk about Hamilton right now. That's day. But Washita, me and you were out there fishing in 30 to 40 foot, fishing these grass ditches, trying to find deep brush piles, rock piles. You go on that tree deal. And these two guys will go there and flip and catch fish. And it just goes to show you those big lakes like that. If whatever your strength is, go find a way to catch them there. Don't go try to do something else. And I know eventually, y'all, Johnny came down here and we got to fish, and I'm going to go up there to his neck of the woods. And y'all, I'm probably just I might not even fish. I might just go ahead and be the camera guy and let him go to work. Because when we get out there on Table Rock or Beaver and we're throwing these little swim baits and these, fishing in 40, 50 foot, I'm just probably going to be videoing him. So
we'll get you on some good ones. Well, one thing about that, Jimmy, I really like what you're talking about there was the, I'm going to scroll out. We're actually going to go up. We spent a little bit of time at Derricks before we got blown off the lake. Now I'm going to go try to get up here and find Derricks. There we go. Is this it right here? Yeah.
Is that it? Yeah, that's it. There's
There's old Derricks. So
old Derricks. Shit, we have a love-hate relationship with Derricks.
Yeah, I have a couple lakes in my area. They're like that too. It's either feast or famine.
Yes.
So the deal with Derricks that was interesting, and this is something that I always kind of this is something I've been talking about. I've talked about this in videos before. I think I've talked about this in the live stream before. But one thing that I'm getting more and more confident about is that if you have one day of fishing and you want to consistently catch fish and maximize the number of fish you're catching on every fishing trip, the best thing to do is to pick a little section of the lake, let's say this creek right here, and just fish it. Don't mess with anything else. So we're going to throw that section of the lake right there. We're only going to fish that section. Why do that? Well, I'm going to explain with Derricks because this is kind of interesting. This is just one of those scenarios where this worked out. We started out by trying to run all the obvious structures out here. And there's no contour maps. That's why I'm not showing you a contour map out here. Is there any images of this lake drawn down, Jimmy?
Oh, there's one. There is one good one. Yep, right there.
Oh, that's the one. Okay. So we got this lake drawn down a little bit. I'll show you guys kind of what we're talking about. But we fished some of the more obvious points. So stuff where you got like a nice point that sticks out here and drops off on the end here. Some of your obvious points. Just some of the stuff that if you looked at it on a contour map or you just kind of were around, you'd be like, okay, here you go. Here's your obvious spots that stick out. And we ran those. And we really didn't get any bites. We saw fish, though, on the live scope and on the down imaging, side imaging, that were suspended and kind of chasing bait, and it just wasn't really happening. And we started actually running some spots that are more of the kind of traditional spots that Jimmy's caught fish on in the past, and we just really struggled. And that's the problem a lot of times with fishing history. Those fish that we were fishing for, they were basically fish that were fishing based on like the basics of what we think are the best looking spots on the lake. So kind of this general knowledge of fishing, or spot that Jimmy has caught them on before. So trying to hit the community holes or like history spots. And it just really didn't work for us at all. It can work under certain conditions, but I would say it's kind of like a 50-50 gamble. If you try to go fish history or fish community holes, you're going to catch them 50% of the time, maybe even less than that. Is that kind of what you found too, Jimmy?
Yeah, and that's right. That's one thing that I started doing, this last winter out on this lake. Johnny knew, and hopefully this year we can continue in a way. But man, I had a great year out here on crankbaits in the winter. I mean, it was phenomenal. And then I went to other lakes and did it too. But I fished this lake just the most because it was just fire. I was telling Johnny every time I came out, I didn't just fish the same 8 stretches. Now I did fish some again, but I would fish different parts and do the same strategy. And I ended up catching fish all up and down that lake using the strategies and some in very particular ways. I was using this rattle trap and then my little shallow square bill. And, it never got super cold to where they went deeper. Now, some people might have caught them deeper, and we had a couple cold days. But, I mean, I would run different areas and things, but at times, what I learned is there was really 1 or 2 areas I consistently caught fish. But like one area, like midway up the river up there, Johnny, it's kind of in the midsection of the river. I mean, there was one trip where, it went down up there. And then guess what? I might have caught one fish up there after that, and I checked them, but so that's one thing that led me to is just to go out there with an open mind and fish. So just for y'all to do the same thing on y'all's lakes, if it's a big giant lake, pick a creek, go to it. With me at Millwood, I've had to start fishing it different because that place changes every single year. We're going to have that frog video we're going to come out with where Johnny just gets after it. We're fishing an area of the lake that's one of my favorite areas. But, y'all, that area has changed so much every year. And it doesn't look the same. It doesn't fish the same. And that's one thing about Millwood I know has made me a better angler. It's not just always fish history, And then I'll let Johnny talk about that creek because he got on something that, like I said, that storm came through and ran us off the lake. But he was on something.
Yeah, so what I told Jimmy, he was like, fish are kind of acting weird. How are we going to catch them? And I'm like, okay, we got to go back to square one. This is pulling out the Fish the Moment offshore playbook. You guys can check it out on our website, fishthemoment.com. But it's just pulling out the classic strategies for finding offshore fish. And what that is for me is getting into a creek, starting at the mouth, graphing all the way to the back, and then graphing all the way on the other side of the creek. And just get on the graph and just drive your boat. And this is specifically for offshore bass fishing. We probably could have caught some fish up shallow if we wanted to as well, but we were trying to catch them offshore. And we just started graphing. And what we saw is there was a lot of bait everywhere, and the fish were just kind of randomly roaming around because it was cloudy and calm. And what I told Jimmy is I was like, we need to find some areas out here where there's some sort of cover just out here off these banks, whether it's brush piles, rock piles, something, that also we can see some bait fish and some bass around them. The fish weren't setting up like right in the brush or right on the rock piles. They were just kind of roaming around. But I knew that in those conditions, those cloudy conditions, no wind, you can just crank those fish with deep diving crankbait and sometimes catch them. So we got through all this area, and we actually ended up right back where we launched our boat. And right off this boat ramp, right where it drops out into the channel, there's a little rock pile down there. And I threw that crankbait across it, and I didn't really see very many fish around it. They were all kind of roaming. But after 4 or 5 casts across that brush or the rock pile with a crankbait, I catch about a 4-pounder. And I'm like, okay, it's going down now. And what I started doing was graphing more areas just down this bank. And I just went randomly down this bank. I wasn't caring about the contour lines. We don't have a contour map for this lake. So I literally just put my boat in like 10 foot of water and just put side scan on and just started driving. And you can actually see there's a couple brush piles like right in here, right over here. There's some stump stuff around here. And I started marking areas where I saw a few fish, saw bait fish, and we just went down this area. And I've marked 10 to 15 spots from basically the boat ramp down this direction. And I know that there are fish now in this area offshore because I just caught a 4-pounder here. So I know that somewhere in this general vicinity there's going to be more fish offshore around some type of cover. The first fish came in 8 to 12 foot of water, so I felt like if I could find more in 8 to 12 foot. And we started finding brush, and we started running it, and then we were only doing that for 5 minutes when we got ran off the lake. So I think that if we were able to actually go out and keep cranking, I think we could have put a good bag in the boat and feel pretty confident about that. And what we ended up doing is fishing a lot of areas that Jimmy had never even really looked at before because he kind of focused more on those really key structure spots that are out here more on the main lake that are easier to find, as opposed to just this is just a boring nothing flat. And we were finding brush and rock and stuff out here. And that's how I fish a lot, guys, is I just pick a creek. And in my mind, I'm like, there are fish in this creek somewhere. And I don't know if they're going to be on this flat this time, or maybe the next time I get here, they're going to be on this little ditch back in here if it's a different time of the year. Maybe they're setting up on these stumps back in here. And the way that I determine that is, where's the bait fish? Where are the fish? If I'm seeing bait fish back in the back of this creek, seeing bass on my fish finder, I'm going to be back here. If I see a bunch of bait and fish out here, I'm going to be over here. Now, you don't just have to find shad and stuff like that. You could also find bluegill beds. You could find rock piles where you see fish that might mean they're feeding on crawfish. There's a lot of kind of indicators, but really what I do is use my power of elimination and deduction, I guess, to use the electronics, use what I know to just break down a creek. And I find that this works for me 95% of the time when I'm on the lake, just picking a creek and just figuring out what they're doing versus running around the entire lake and trying to force some type of pattern. What are your thoughts on that, Jimmy?
Yeah, well, and then the thing about you went down there and found them brush piles, and I haven't told you about one of those little areas. I fished it I fished it here and there, and I was like, man, those brush just must got planted because there was a lot there. And I was like, dude, I went over this a couple months ago, and there's not much brush. But the thing, though, liking about this lake, too, and it just, y'all, just to let y'all know, like, how I've attacked it, but now I'm going to have to kind of go back and just change up a little bit. I don't fish the brush much in this lake because of, I mean, the people down here know this is a crappie lake. I mean, they're catching them right now as we're talking probably. Someone's out there catching crappie. So out there in the winter, spring, there are boats everywhere on this lake, but they're crappie fishing. So I've just kind of quit fishing brush piles because, like, I even told Johnny when we were out there, there's one brush pile I love, and there's a boat on it. About every time I'm out there, there's a boat on it. And because there's crappie and big bass there. I mean, it just makes sense. So I've kind of quit fishing the brush piles and doing this thing, and just, and I've probably missed some fish and missed some times to where they're there. And these days I've struggled just fishing these main lake areas or some of these obvious spots, or even some of them, little hidey hole, offshore stuff out there. I've kind of missed this bite. And this bite's, when it's on, it's, it's a bite to be after, it's the way me and you grew up fishing. I've just kind of gotten away from it.
For sure. And there's a lake. I'm going to pull up Navionics here, because there's a lake that Derricks reminds me of by my area, and I actually kind of started to figure this out. One of the reasons I figured this out is because I fished this lake here. It's Lake Uchi over in Oklahoma. Very similar to Derricks. It kind of looks similar, probably under the water. And one thing you'll know about Uchi is that it has some really pretty looking ledges on it. So you see these really sharp drops. I mean, anybody I use this lake as a lot of my example footage on Fish the Moment. So if you ever see my examples of ledges, it's probably from this lake, because they're just beautiful, like textbook. And I got caught into the trap for a while where I would only go check these ledges, and I would just fish the ledges. And all I would do when I went out to the lake is I would just graph these ledges here in the summertime. And then if I wasn't getting bit on these ledges, I would go home and I would say, oh, didn't catch them. They weren't out in the ledges. I'm done. And if I wasn't catching them on the ledges, maybe I go up shallow and I try to catch fish up shallow, but that doesn't go that well for me anyways. So if I'm going to try to catch them offshore, I would do that. Well, recently I've taken to just basically stop fishing these obvious ledges, or maybe not stop fishing them, but I don't focus on the ledges. And I don't think about, like, okay, there's a ledge here, here, here. And I basically pick like a 5-mile section of this lake and just run every single ledge. What I do instead is I will go pick a creek, like this creek. Or even, like, sometimes I'll just pick this creek, Jimmy. Like, I'll just go to this creek right here. And I did this in this last winter. I didn't know by graphing this creek, one, there are like 3 rock piles that stick out. They're like beautiful, that don't show up on the contour line map. Here, here, and here, and there's another one here. And I just graphed through this entire thing because I'm like, I got to figure out where these fish are in this creek. And I hammered them off all these rock piles, like caught like 30 fish. And I would have never fished that spot if I hadn't just launched my boat and said, I'm going to figure out how to catch them in here. It's a small little creek. It's only, let's see here. We start from the mouth. I mean, it's like a half a mile long, a third of a mile long. It's not very big. But I know there's a boat ramp here. I know there's probably some released fish here from tournaments. And I just got in this area and just figured them out. And that's kind of what we did in the cotton shed area. That's kind of what we were doing in a lot of our areas. And I think that is crucial, guys. If you're going out to these lakes and you just don't have a lot of days to fish, if you're not out here every single day following the fish around, just pick an area and just figure it out. That's my number one piece of advice, and I think that Jimmy's done the same thing as well, learning Millwood. I think it's how you learn to these areas, right, Jimmy? You just picked the area and just, I'm going to go fish.
Yeah, and that's right. Because I've been down here for 4 years now, and there was days I would just launch at a ramp and go fish, and and that's like, so there's a couple of oxbows, like the horseshoe oxbow, and then I fished mud too, and then like parts of that river. Like there's sections I just fished and stayed in instead of running around. But what's hurt me now, y'all, is I fished the lake for, like I just told y'all, and I know so much about it. I do at times get in that trap of running history instead of just fishing. So one thing that I'm excited about with working with Johnny now and getting to fish a little more is, and I've told people, hey, I'm about to just go back to just fishing Millwood, because y'all, there's ways, that I have not caught them out there that I did 2 years ago or even 3 years ago. I mean, last year was a weird year. The lake came up and, it was just not right. And it kind of got right. And then in July, August came, and then all of a sudden I'm coaching football. But I'm just going to go back to fishing, and like I said, I'm going to go out there tomorrow. I'm going to go fish. I'm not going to try to just do too much of history, and never know. I might end up in one of those ox boats throwing a frog for a couple of hours and seeing what happens with it.
Nice. Yeah, get after that frog bite. I know everyone loves watching some frog footage. We're going to have to, if you got another frog bite, I'm just going to have to go down there and or you need to get one of your old high school students to come follow you around with the camera and just record that frog the whole time you get those blow-ups. That's what we need to do.
Hey, your bod camera got some of the blow-ups, man. I mean, it was great. Now, hey, one thing I was going to tell you, what hit me about that day with the frog fishing, and we probably should have talked about this earlier, but we can talk about it later too, was my equipment. So I've been throwing my frog on it was a 6-4 whatever gear ratio. Is that what you're throwing yours on that day?
Yeah, 6-4-1.
So because you throw a lot of your stuff on that 6-4-1. So my old frog setup that I had before that day with you was a 6-4-1. And then I noticed I put that faster reel on there. That was, like an 8 to something. I'd go to look, but it was a faster reel. And that was one of my I told you I was frustrated. I couldn't get that thing y'all to walk right. And anyway, Johnny grabbed it and did it fine, but I was just like, my history of moving it wasn't correct. Well, then it finally hit me. Hey, that was a different reel than I've been using. So y'all, one thing I'll just say, unless you're like Johnny, don't change your equipment for that type of fishing. If you're familiar with the way, do it. But that was something, then the next day, me and you were out there, I finally got that thing to walk. And that was something that kind of hit me the past 2 days was, hey, I wasn't using my same reel. It was a different reel, and it got me. Because I don't throw it much.
That's interesting. Well, I was doing the same thing. Since I was a visitor in your boat flipping, I was flipping with a 7'6" medium heavy with like 18-pound fluorocarbon, and you were using the Denali Lithium Pro 7.6 extra heavy flipping rod with 20-pound Sunline fluorocarbon, and it's crazy how that difference in equipment. You landed every single fish that bit you. I lost like 3 or 4 good ones flipping, and I would normally be throwing the same rod you were throwing, but I left it at home. I don't know why, but because I only could bring like 5 or 6 rods with me, so I didn't have all my setups. And having the right equipment, guys, to match the technique is extremely important, and we've talked about that in one of my recent videos I made on the Fish the Moment YouTube channel. So definitely go check out that video in terms of the rod power and action. It's pretty important.
Yeah, that's right. And I know it's funny. You brought 5 rods down here, and there we go. We caught them away flipping. I didn't tell you. We were talking about, ways we were going to catch them, and I kind of joked like, we might get on a flipping bite, but I really didn't think that was about to happen like it did.
For sure. Well, here's one more thing. I want to throw in a couple more segments around here, Jimmy, just because we have a few more minutes, and I want to try out this segment to see if people enjoy it. But before we do that, again, guys, I want to give a big shout out to Bridgeford for sponsoring the podcast. We do a Bridgeford beef jerky giveaway. So if you guys leave a comment down below, since we're recording these live, we're not recording them live anymore. We're doing these pre-recorded just because we want to be able to get to the lake and not have the weather messing us up. Like when we were doing the live streams on Tuesdays, it was so hard because the one day it would be nice would be a Tuesday all week, and we couldn't get to the lake because it's like, we gotta stay for the live stream. So we're pre-recording these, but because of that, we are going to be doing the Bridgeford beef jerky giveaway a little bit different. So if you've made it all the way to the end of this video, then you definitely deserve to get into the giveaway, and all you need to do is leave a comment down below letting us know what your least confident technique is. What are you the least confident in on your lake? Like a technique that works well. So like for me, it's flipping. For Jimmy, it's throwing the frog. Maybe those are 2 techniques that we're not that confident in. What's your least confident technique? Leave that down in the comments below. And then if you get that comment down there, we're going to select one person at random. We'll reply to your comments, and we'll send you a free case of Bridgeford beef jerky, 12 packs beef jerky sent straight to your house. Huge shout out to Bridgeford. Also huge shout out to the Bass Tank for sponsoring the Fish the Moment podcast. And the last segment I want to talk about, Jimmy, here is a little Tackle Warehouse deal. So we're going to go Tackle Warehouse. If you guys go actually to Tackle Warehouse, you can actually use our Tackle Warehouse code, and I'll just pull this up over here. I'm just going to I'll pull this up from the deep dive. I had the deep dive up, but let's pull this up. We're going to go to fishthemoment.com. If you guys go to our website, fishthemoment.com, and go to support Fish the Moment, you can find our Tackle Warehouse link. It has a little tag at the end, $from equals fish at the moment. If you click that link, it'll take you to Tackle Warehouse, and any purchases you make off that link, anything you do on the website now is linked to us, and if you check out and purchase some items, we get a small percentage of the profit. So all I want to do is go through some of these new items, Jimmy, because there's some featured new items that look kind of interesting on Tackle Warehouse, and I thought this would be kind of something kind of interesting to go through some of the new swim baits, the new baits, just take a look at it. Jimmy's getting a good look. One thing I saw here, this looks pretty interesting, Megabass Dark Sleeper, and Randy has his hands on some of these, and I'm about to head over and fish with him this week, this Megabass Sleeper Gill. What are your thoughts on the old Sleeper Gill here? Because this thing looks pretty appetizing.
Man, it does look really good. I'm a little interested by that. I will say, like, I know I was talking to you about this. Sometimes, man, them baits that look too real just don't get bit for me. And some people are probably like, well, you're crazy. But anyway, but I was want to try this out. Even at Millwood, I've told you some of them areas I fish, I mean, the fish I'm catching are eating brim and crawfish. I don't even know if they ever eat shad. They do as a snack, like me and you might want to go get an Oreo or get a little milkshake. But they're eating these dudes and crawfish because that's their steaks. So and hamburgers. So I don't know about you. I mean, that's probably. Where can you throw and catch a fish at with that up in your neck of the woods?
So for us, I think it's going to be my plan is I'm going to try to see if we can find some brim beds. I don't know if Randy has electronics in his boat, so we may just have to visually see him, and the lakes are all high here too, but I'm thinking if we find some offshore brim beds, sometimes in my areas those brim will spawn in the clear lakes down in like 10-15 feet of water. So I think this would be a killer, because it's 3/4 ounce. It's gonna be a killer brim bed bait. I think this could be pretty sweet. They actually have them in stock, so I'm probably gonna pick some of these up too, because they actually have them in stock, which is shocking because they just launched. So I'm gonna pick a couple of these up and check them out. These look interesting. 3/4 ounce. I think they're like 3 inches long. So they're not that big, but could be a little deal right there. This is something I saw that was pretty interesting, Jimmy. You like cranking. I like cranking. This is kind of like the old Pose 300 crankbait. It's basically this, the Pose crankbait. That's what David Fritz used to crank with all the time. And it's this balsa wood crankbait. Got an interesting bill. What are your thoughts on bringing back the old balsa wood crankbaits? I know you're a big fan of the throwback or unique crankbaits.
I was about to say, I wish I could have got my hands on these before it hit the store, man. I mean, I'm all about this. I like to have some of those. I mean, let's make it happen. I don't know. I mean, I'm curious to see if if it'd be interesting to see. Let's say you're on a school of fish, and then they quit biting the normal baits, your 6XDs or your Rapalas, whatever deep diving crankbait Norman you love, and then you put this out there and if they bite again, or if you can catch more fish with this, that'd be an interesting test to do. But I'd love to throw this bait.
Yeah, this looks good. 12 to 14 feet, David Fritz, old school special. I'll put a link to all these baits, guys, down in the description of the video, too, if you want to check them out, and it'll be links for the Tackle Warehouse and stuff, too. I just thought this would be a fun segment because there's always these new baits that are coming out. These just look like spoons. This thing looked interesting. What are your thoughts on this? It's like a mini spinnerbait swim jig thing. This is kind of wild.
Wow. Yeah, it is. And I even see there's like a muddier colored one down there. I don't know. That might be something, I like to talk about throwing different baits. This would be dang different for sure. It's the opposite of what you hear about with those big blades, but like you're saying, it's kind of like a little swim jig. That's very interesting. Whoever came up with this, I like it. It might, like I said, something to try.
First gen Flash X swim jig is what it's called. So that's interesting. Oh, this looks good. 3/4 ounce. I mean, that looks like it'd be a nice little snack. Swimming in some brush piles or some, maybe wintertime swimming them around. That's pretty fancy.
Well, it's like for me, like the lakes down here, for example, Derricks. I told you I tried to catch some of them suspended fish in the trees and around brush with the jig, and I just thought that water was too stained. And this right here with that little blade might be just a little difference to get some of them to bite. I caught that one fish on a jackhammer somehow, but I must have just put it right in front of its face. So that might be, I might have to look into it.
Those are interesting too. Again, it's the first gen Flash X swim jig. We'll put that in the description. I'm just literally pulling this off. This is not like sponsored content, guys, other than the fact that we get support from Tackle Warehouse. But we're just pulling up the baits here. Blade bait, I don't know. We're not blade bait kind of guys. We're in the summer. We don't need to necessarily mess with that right now. It's kind of interesting time to launch it. I want to go look at some of these the swim baits though. I'm always on these swim baits. I saw two the other day actually that looked pretty interesting. So one of them was this deal. I'm seeing guys hammer them on this style of bait. I think it was Kenta Kimura or one of the guys on the Elite Series is throwing something like this. And I'm not a big swim bait guy because I don't like throwing stuff that's $80. It's too expensive. I got one of these actually that I bought like 2 years ago, and it's the KGB gizzard thing, and it was like $100 swim bait. And I bought it because I was like, I gotta throw these. And I've never thrown it because I'm too scared to throw it because it's too pretty and too nice.
That thing fish though, I know that's a dude.
Yeah, this is here's a little square bill for comparison. So I know this catches them and I'm gonna throw it, but like part of it is like, dude, gas is expensive enough right now. I don't want to spend $80 on a swim bait when I have to put $80 to fill up my truck and boat to get out to the lake. So part of me, I'm like, I kind of want to just pick a pack of Z-Craws up like you do, or throw a frog. You can catch 50 fish on a frog and a pack of Z-Craws, and what else do you really need? But what are your thoughts on the old swim bait game?
Man, that's something I've not jumped to yet. I've bought a couple of smaller glide baits and have not had any success with them. But like I've told you, those two kids I've coached, man, dude, they have gotten on this probably before a lot of people in Arkansas did, and they've put a lot of money in them. They have caught big fish. Even in Arkansas with it, Hamilton's a place they've caught some fish with. And I'll just say that because they've advertised it. Everybody knows they're Hamilton. But I'm like you. It's hard for me to put that money into this. And we're in Arkansas. Y'all, I can get a 5-pounder with that Z-Craw or a $6 swim bait. Well, I spend an $80 one. Now, hey, if I was going to go catch a 10, yes, sir, I might do that. But, y'all, there's not many 10s in Arkansas. Now, in Texas, I get it. People are throwing these things to catch them. And that's just, I get it because Texas, those fish are more pressured. They're used to seeing big bait, and down here in these lakes, there's not much big shad, the shad population's small. So I think the bass in Arkansas see these giant swim baits and they're just like, oh, hey, I'm not going to eat it because I don't got to, because there's just not much bass. And, it's just there's not much fight pool like there is in Texas or some other lakes. So I probably need to get into this eventually, just not right now. And someone out there is like, oh, hey, I catch so many big fish on it. Well, hey, good for you. I get it. There's so many different ways to catch a fish. So, it's just not me.
For sure. Well, that's how I feel too. I would gravitate more to like the little craws, the stuff like this. These are the type of things. It's a little bit less expensive. A little bit more accessible for the average guy. That's why I like throwing my jigs, my Fish Moment offshore jig. Got one right here. You can buy 2 of these for $6. So you get 2 jigs for $6 on jewelbait.com versus an $80 swim bait. So I don't know. I guess it's each their own. But that's something that I thought was kind of interesting. And there's so many other baits here, guys. The one thing I would say is there's so many baits on the market. If you go through all these new baits, there's always new stuff coming out. And it's awesome to get caught up in all the baits. We talk about baits on our channel all the time. And again, you can use our Tackle Warehouse link if you want to check out baits. But one thing that Jimmy and I think we've kind of talked about consistently is that the baits themselves are not always the most important. For example, if we came into this area, we were catching them, does it really matter if you're throwing a Strike King frog versus a Spro frog versus another type of frog? Probably not. It's probably more about how you work it. Does it matter if you're fishing a Z-Craw versus a fighting frog when you're flipping on that deal? Probably not. But the weight that you're flipping on there, that might make a difference. The fall rate, the size of the bait, a 5-inch versus a 4-inch bait. I think that makes a lot more difference than anything else, really, that you're dealing with. And, if you go through here, I almost pretty confident that I'd be able to catch fish on this Depp's little creature bait thing here, or on this Nichols flapjack thing, or this Depp's craw. I think we probably could catch equal amount of fish on all these things. All these baits we're pulling up, you can catch them about the same on all of them. But if you get the right weight, the right hook, everything like that, that's the more important thing. And one kind of thought on that I'm thinking about is when we were over here in the cotton shed area, we were flipping, and it was interesting because Jimmy was flipping with a 5/16 ounce weight in this little area back in here. I started flipping with a heavier jig, a 5/8 ounce jig. I didn't get any bites. He was hammering them on the 5/16s. I then went to a 1/8 ounce weight. I thought if he's getting them on the real light one, I'm going to go really light. 1/8 ounce. Didn't get any bites on that. Finally went to a 5/16 with Jimmy and almost immediately caught a fish. So the weight of that bait can a lot of times be a lot more important even than if you're throwing, the perfect body style. Would you agree with that, Jimmy, or would you disagree?
No, you're perfectly right. Like, and that was the thing. You had that bigger jig on, and I know you had that bigger jig on because we might talk to somebody that recommended that big jig, but like you even said, hey, we need to be in deeper water for that bigger jig. We were shallow right here, and that heavier bait was going down in it, and it was straight mud. So y'all, if you're throwing that 1 ounce jig in this grass, it hits the mud, all of a sudden the mud kicks up, fish, whatever, don't like it. Then that lighter one was just not going down fast enough, and that current was kind of carrying it. But that 5/16 to that 3/8 ounce size was just getting in there good enough. And like, a lot of my fish and I was catching were hitting it before it ever hit the bottom. I mean, it was just perfect with it, like I like that. My big one I caught that day, I mean, I told you, I saw the swirl and everything. Like, I saw the flash of the white of the body, and I was like, oh, got a fish. And that dude was running, set the hook, and it took me for a ride, So, but yeah, so that's just, like I said, the weights and all that, it's a big difference.
Well, it's interesting, too, because really we caught fish on, over 2 days, we caught them on only 2 different baits, the frog and the Texas rig creature bait. That's it.
Yeah.
We probably could have caught fish on other things, swim jigs, other stuff like that, but we didn't really need to throw all that many baits. We really needed a bait that was on the surface moving faster and a bait that was getting down on the bottom. And I think that a lot of times you don't need to get as complicated with your bait selection, but you should have a few different baits to cover different water columns. When I'm fishing offshore, I like to have a fast-moving bait that's on the bottom, a slow-moving bait that's on the bottom, and then a fast-moving bait in the middle of the water column, and a slow-moving bait in the middle of the water column. And I kind of have those 4 different baits. And when you're fishing in a foot of water, it's a little bit different, but you really could have the same thing. A fast-moving bait on top, a slow-moving bait on top, fast-moving bait on the bottom, slow-moving bait in the bottom. If you keep those sorts of things going and experiment with all those 4 combinations in your area, I think you're going to probably hit what you need 90% of the time. And you only need 4 baits to cover those scenarios. You don't need 75 lures in your tackle box.
And that was the thing, I told you, even like down here with me, and I was talking to you about my reels, rods, how I fish 2 different types of bodies of water, like when I'm fishing a place like this, and let's say I'm on some fish after I fish it for a while, I might have 3 different Texas rigs tied on, and I might have, 2 different types of top waters. But like the same with me fishing offshore, I do the same thing. When I'm fishing those offshore lakes, I like to have 2 different types of deep diving crankbaits. One might be a little deeper than the other. The color's different. I like to have different worms, jigs, all tied on. Like I said, I'm not throwing 10 different baits. I'm throwing different styles or colors because I'm real big on like, hey, if it's going to be a chartreuse and black day, after they hit that crankbait 2 or 3 times and I know, then guess what? I'm about to put the other one up or tie another chartreuse and black one on, either way, And I don't know about Johnny if you're that way, but I'm real weird on my colors. And if they're biting one, I'm about to figure it out and get other ones like it, And like I said, it's just your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, I'm colorblind over here. I don't really pay attention to color. I need to pay attention to color more because I've seen that with you. The color can make a difference. That's something I don't normally mess with too much. And you also, I know you focus sometimes on like the different crankbaits, like the vibrations of the crankbaits, different styles. Sometimes that can be important. So I think that's really good at maximizing your area when you get as many bites off a spot as possible. And I think that's pretty important. I think just finding them and getting those initial bites, if you're throwing a striking crankbait versus a 6 cents crankbait, as long as it's the right kind of general deal, you're probably going to get bit. But you might be able to catch 2 to 1 on one type of crankbait versus another. But you're still going to catch fish if you're throwing that crankbait. So those small adjustments are good once you find them. And maybe not as important before you start getting bit. I guess that's where I would say.
Yeah, that's like I said, you nailed it on the head there. Like it's weird because we're gonna kind of getting ahead on the show. We're gonna do some underwater footage for y'all and talk about different, how the baits look in the water in a pool and in a lake. And one thing I know we're gonna talk about, like Johnny just said, I like to throw some different crankbaits. And this year was a year to where like there was a day they'd want this one or this one, and And now with the plastics, just said it. I have a couple colors I'll switch up, and I've had my moments with colors they want one or the other. But one thing is like the big worm. I've always throw just one company of the big worm, the Zoom Old Monster. And I started throwing that other one. You saw that DMN Wild thing. I like it. But we're gonna get into our underwater footage, and I know I'm about to go out and work on that for y'all. But I've already learned a lot about some brands and how they look underwater compared to my Zumo Monster. It could be good or bad. Y'all have to see it when that comes out.
For sure. I'm excited to see that. Jimmy's got, I gave him the underwater drone that I have, and we're going to be getting some photos. We got some stuff, so I haven't had the time to get all that stuff rolling. That's the nice thing about having Jimmy on full time, working with us, editing the videos, getting content, and allows me to kind of take care of all the other odds and ends of running the business, and we're going to keep knocking out the content and hopefully catching them. So, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this podcast. Jimmy, hopefully we were able to share some good knowledge. We're going to probably have you back on here a few more weeks. I'll probably go fish with Randy this week. We might have Randy on next week. Randy's not going anywhere, guys. Randy's still hard to fish at the moment. We're just, everyone's busy, so What was that, Jimmy?
I was just saying, Randy's just a busy man right now. I mean, the dude's fishing a tour. He's a father, husband. I mean, he's just, but he's not gone anywhere. I can't wait to meet Randy. I know you've talked about him, genuine guy. I mean, he's one of those good. I mean, that dude's probably forgot more about fishing at times than I know, in a way, because he's a shallow water angler. I know we don't do it with electronics and stuff, but I mean, he is a fisherman, and I love watching his videos because he has so much little details that I'm over here like, am I going to be like this guy one day? I mean, am I going to talk about this jig and know so much about it, or am I just going to say this is a jig, So can't wait coming up.
For sure. Yeah, we're going to get after it, guys. We're going to have a lot more people. Matt Steffen's going to be showing up in some videos here as well. So you're going to be seeing a lot of faces here on Fish at the Moment. We're going to be trying to get some northern lakes. We have some lakes in our area, these, Highland reservoirs in my area. Jimmy down there on Millwood on the Mud Hole. And we're going to get everything for you so you guys can get a full, well-rounded bass fishing education. That's our goal over here. And Jimmy, thanks again for joining us today. And we'll see you in upcoming videos. And let's get out to Millwood again. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, let's go, buddy. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, guys, we'll talk to you later. Huge shout out again to Bridgeford Beef Jerky and the Bass Tank for sponsoring this episode of the Fish Moment Podcast. And if you guys want to follow us either on the video format, you can find us at Fish the Moment Live YouTube channel if you are listening to the podcast. Or if you're watching the video on YouTube, you can actually download this podcast to listen to on your phone on the Apple Podcast app or on Spotify. So you can download these podcasts, listen to them while you're driving to the lake, listen to them if you want to, or you can listen to them on the podcast, then go watch the video. However you want to consume it, I'll leave all the links down in the description so you can find all that stuff out there. So thanks again, guys, for checking out this podcast. We'll see you guys in the next one.